And I like what you say, Pamela, about how the poppies grow best in groups and clusters. And isn't that so relatable to women and how we do grow best with each other? But there are things that get in the way of that, where we don't harness that collective power and the beauty that can come when we all grow together and how that can be displayed. So I got researching the topic in this frenzy to prepare for the webinar. And as I researched it, I realized that it's very similar to a concept that I've spoken about a lot in my diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So before I got into the strategic recruiting leader role for Cummins, I was the diversity, equity, and inclusion leader for Cummins in the Africa Middle East region. So a lot of my work was focused on gender equity for the region. And I used to talk about something called the Pull Her Down syndrome, or PhD. And I did that when we launched our gender diversity strategy, et cetera, and just spoke to people about this PhD syndrome, pull her down, where women who are exceeding or excelling in spaces in the workforce are pulled down, as the word suggests, and whose opinions are discredited, ignored, questioned, whose efforts are frowned upon, and whose voice and courage may be attacked at sometimes. So in my view, there's similarities between the two. They basically speaking about the same thing and wanting to cut off the tall poppy so that it doesn't exceed the rest of the poppies around them. And in my experience, especially in the D&I role and what I have observed in the workplace on how the tall poppy syndrome impacts gender equity is a couple of points. The first one is what I've seen happen is that when women do get a seat at the table, and I say do get a seat at the table because a lot of women don't get a seat at the table. So let me tell you what table I'm talking about. This concept of women getting a seat at the table is something that's used in corporates and in the world of work, where women get onto a space where they can be involved in decision making, in business decisions, where their voice counts. So for some people, it's executive teams, management teams, board of directors, etc. That's the seat. And it doesn't necessarily need to be at such a high level. It can be in your team that you have the ability to contribute to decision making that your leader is making, or you may be the leader, and that means that you have the seat at the table. So when women do get a seat at the table, with tall poppy syndrome at play, they may feel undermined, as Pamela said, when they contribute to team decisions and business decisions. The ideas may be overlooked or challenged and scrutinized more than similar views from male counterparts. If this silences women in key business decision platforms, the full value of the diversity of thinking that women bring may be missed out on for organizations. And that directly, in my view, impacts gender equity initiatives, gender equity efforts in organizations. The ripple effect of this is that peers and employees may unconsciously emulate what they see happening at the senior leadership level, and it starts to happen in other parts of the business where women's voices are not heard, are not recognized, or not valued or welcomed. And that further stifles the full benefit of diverse thinking that we get from both men and women. The third way that I've seen this at play is where women start to feel additional pressure to perform and prove themselves, needing to convince others that they deserve their promotion, they deserve that advancement opportunity, they deserve the stretch assignment, they deserve the bigger role, and so forth. And this places a huge psychological burden on women, which impacts their mental health. And many may just exit the workforce altogether or burn out and then exit the workforce. The other way that I have seen this play out is where women who are emotionally and psychologically burdened by this constant need to prove themselves, never put a foot wrong, they may express their frustration in a negative way toward other women. And I've seen a couple of ways that this has happened. One is they could be harder on the women in their team, expecting more from them, from their performance and their output, because of what they themselves have been through, believing that they're actually doing a good thing for this woman that's coming up in their organization. Not realizing that this actually becomes a deterrent to other women. They don't want to be in their team with them. They don't want to advance their career. They want to stay out of the firing line and just kind of do their work and go home. In extreme cases where women who have experienced tall poppy syndrome, they may just target other women and do this unconsciously because they lack the self-awareness and the presence to identify their behavior, understand what they're doing, what are their triggers, and where is this coming from. And that in turn may also start to cause self-doubt, lack of self-confidence in the woman who's experiencing the tall poppy syndrome or feels like they're being cut down, and a lot of anxiety when they ask to present ideas or do presentations to senior leaders. And I've had to help a lot of women with this and understand and unpack, why are you feeling this anxiety? You have a great idea. People need to hear about it. It's going to benefit the organization. It's going to benefit other employees. It's going to benefit you. How can you reframe this and get to the root of that self-doubt and the self-confidence? And tall poppy syndrome can do that for people. So in a nutshell, in my view, tall poppy syndrome is never good for gender equity efforts. It negates all that we've tried to achieve by giving women equal access to employment opportunities, which then results in economic freedom and financial stability. And the reason I say that is because our reality in South Africa is that there are more single-led households in South Africa than in any other country in the world. A lot of women are raising their families by themselves and doing it by themselves. And when we give women access to employment opportunities, we help them to become economically free. We help them to become financially stable, to provide for their families, and to have a meaningful life for themselves. So that's the societal impact that I think it has on gender equity. Within the workplace, I think what it does is creates a very toxic work environment where bad behaviors are both consciously and unconsciously perpetuated. And the approach for me is simple: non-tolerance for toxic behaviors and a toxic work environment. Culture is ultimately dictated and influenced by leaders. And the more leaders become aware of concepts like the tall poppy syndrome or the pull her down syndrome or any other negative set of behaviors, the sooner they need to act to eradicate it from the environment. What I often say is that leaders cast a shadow, whether they like it or not. So they set the tone for the right work culture, the right work norms, the right work behaviors from the top. And accountability should be required from leaders first to fix the system, and then employees. The other thing I think could be used as an approach is caring, displaying caring more in the workplace, where caring becomes a fundamental value. So if you remove the negative behavior of tall poppy syndrome and you replace it with a positive behavior, caring could be one of those. Because when you care for each other, you are happy to grow together as a group of poppies instead of wanting to slice off the taller one that is in your midst. I feel I'm very fortunate to work for Cummins, whose core value is caring, amongst the other core value of diversity and inclusion, and where it is expected and it is displayed at every level in the organization. And we also have a strict policy on the treatment of others that is implemented at every level in the organization on a global scale. So my view is always to try and fix the system. And Linda is going to talk about another view, another holistic approach of what else we can do. But I do think that from a systems perspective, we need to pay attention to the kind of work cultures we have. We need to pay attention to the types of behaviors that are rife in the organization and be courageous enough to address them and to remove them, especially if we have the power of leadership. Thank you.
So the focus of my presentation is empowering women from the inside out. And I totally believe that the environment in which women are shape them. So our first responsibility as an employer is to make sure that we create an environment where women feel safe, respected, and valued, and where they are free to grow. That's our responsibility. But sometimes we can actually go further by looking at what is the inner environment that can also impact how women show up, how they thrive, and how they contribute in the workplace. And that is the topic of this presentation. I've been with Free to Grow 29 years, and I've always been aware of the fact that women grow up differently than men do. We are often being told you're just a woman, and we're being told by our churches and by our teachers and by our parents and so many other places that there is a place for us. You have a place at the kitchen table and not at the boardroom table. And gradually, these voices become our internal voices, and they start to determine how we see ourselves and how we see our future. So EmpowHER was designed for women at the start of their leadership journey, a very critical stage, because how you start also determines how you will end. And empowering women from the inside out then becomes critical for women who are just starting on this leadership ladder. Because when you are at the senior level, you already know deep down that you are worthy. You have self-confidence because you've been promoted. You are the tall poppy. So irrespective of the behavior around you, you do have a level of self-respect and self-confidence and drive, although it's been knocked time and time again. But when you are just starting to climb that ladder, you don't have that belief in yourself yet because you haven't achieved to the same extent than women sitting around the table. And when you are still fragile and still finding your way and have not yet bloomed, when you are cut back time and time again, it changes the way you look at yourself. It takes away the hope that you have that you will ever be able to achieve something. It takes away the belief in your own value, and you start to internalize those voices. Those people who say you are nothing, those people who belittle you, those people who make jokes, those people who cut you down, their voice becomes your voice. And you do not grow according to your potential, and you do not accelerate according to what you are really able to. So that is why it is so important that we help women at the early stages of the career and the leadership ladder to nurture the inner environment, nurture a strong sense of self-worth, of confidence and resilience from within, so that they are not dependent on the outside to validate their worth. If we have to wait for other people to say we are good enough, we have potential, thanks for the contribution, and for other people to not knock us, we may, as women, wait forever. We need to internalize that we are worthy. We need to internalize that we have potential, And we need to hang on to that in spite of what happens in the environment. Because no matter how positive the environment may be, there will always be somebody who has his or her knife in for you. And so we cannot just be dependent on a positive environment. We must say, how can we help women thrive in spite of? Because if they don't experience challenges at work, at home, they may go back to a man that says, I don't want my wife, a wife that earns more than I do. I don't want a wife who has a better position than I have. So strengthening the inner environment so that women can grow. And this is why I designed EmpowHER. Because at that stage of a woman's life and a career, she needs a tailor-made approach that has been designed to help her address voices that she has heard throughout her life, the knocks that she has had. We do some research, we do a career enabler survey, where all the women that go through EmpowHER complete a survey about where they come from, how it shaped them. About 30 to 40% of women in organizations say they've either been victims or survivors of abuse, or they have witnessed abuse of people that they love. We come to the workplace often and we are battered, we are bruised, and then we are being knocked because we are now growing too tall. So when women are still young and they have the potential to grow and the desire to grow, we need to be able to create for them a program that will give them exactly what they want. It's not just send them to a leadership development program, because the journey, leadership journey of men and women are not the same. We start with a backlog, and EmpowHER helps women overcome that. There's been very interesting research done by McKinsey's where they say the problem is not that there's too few women at the top. The problem is there's not enough women on the ladder. If we could get more women on the ladder, and if we could make them successful, they will rise to the top, and there will be more of them who can move onto that and sit next onto that at that table. But that bottom rungs of the ladder for many women are broken or they're missing. It's not just a matter of being good at your job and up you step. No, there are so many biases and so many challenges that we have to overcome. Lamona, you talked about women being, so many of the women being sole providers. Women do two jobs. The women who complete our survey still say 90% of the household responsibilities are mine. But I'm still trying to climb the ladder at work as well. And that is why we need a special approach for them. What is exactly what EmpowHER does? It fixes that broken rung and support them on their first steps. So what is needed in a program like this? I've done some research now also when I looked at the poppy syndrome that I also didn't know. Mona, you're not the only one. And I was so encouraged to find that exactly the things that's been the foundation of how EmpowHER has been built and put together are exactly those things that research tells us are actually useful in encountering the poppy working against the poppy syndrome. And the first one is a strong focus on self-awareness and resilience. Women are focused on everybody but themselves. They listen to everybody's voices, the children, the partners, the husbands, the people, everybody are important and they are not. And we're not aware of what is happening within me. What is my own desires? What are my own voices? What are my own needs? So helping women become aware of those voices, those needs, those gifts, those talents, that potential that they have, and the awareness of how they respond to what is happening around them. And then helping them develop the resilience to keep on bouncing back. If you cut me down, next time my flower is just a little bit bigger and a little bit higher. It doesn't come automatically. Many of these women come from an environment where there's struggle and there's day-to-day survival. So bouncing back at home, at work is not easy. They need extra tools. And that is where the journey starts, building psychological capital in our women of potential. The next step is skills development. It's great to have psychological capital, but you also need social capital. Women need the ability to communicate their opinions and their needs. Lamona, exactly what you said, you know, that we don't even believe and trust ourselves. What if they say no? What if they don't like it? We need to be able to communicate assertively what we want, what we need, and what we are not happy about. We need to be able to negotiate for ourselves. We need to be able to express ourselves properly. We need to be able to handle conflict. Often women go to the extreme of they're either silent or they're violent. Silent, they don't say a word, and then they become violent because if it becomes too much, then we explode. How can we find that way of not whining and not being aggressive, but asserting ourselves in a way that also values the dignity of others? So there needs to be quite a lot of skills development around that. And in our EmpowHER program, we have 9 days where it starts with know myself, grow myself, promote myself, assert myself, the whole series, lead, adding value, all of those things tailored very specifically for the needs of women. And it's spread out over either a year or over 2 years, depending on what the needs of the client is. The next one that we look at is celebrating achievements. Achievements that are celebrated build self-confidence, they build self-esteem. And it's critical for women who have often been battered and knocked down and cut down to know that that's one part of my story. But the other part of the story, there's a space where I am celebrated. There's the space where the spotlight is on me. There's a place where I can say, this is me, and I can be proud of that, and I can brag, and my other poppies applaud me for that. And this creates from module to module, women have the space in EmpowHER to share their achievement. What have you achieved? What have you done? What have you accomplished in the time, in the month before, between the sessions? And they applaud each other and they help each other grow in a safe space where they become a group that support each other. And I think when you talk, I suppose you will also talk about that movement. It's no longer a program, it became a movement. The next one that we need is mentoring. Women need support. They need people who can guide them, who can champion them, who can advocate for them, who can be sponsors for them. And in the program, we have 2 parallel streams. We have a development of women, high potential women, and we have to have got a parallel stream development of the leaders of these women, or mentors that the women actually have approached to ask them, and they learn with every module. There's a parallel thing about how do I actually do this and support the women that I mentor to make that a reality in their lives. And lastly, role models. We help the organization identify role models because role models are extremely important in showing women what is possible for them and helping them make other choices for themselves. This is such a classic picture. I absolutely love it. I'm just going to give you a minute, not a minute, 10 seconds to see who you recognize in that picture. I'm sure all your eyes will go right in the middle, Albert Einstein. I'm sure you all saw him. Just look a little bit to the left, 2 people to the left. Do you know where that is? Marie Curie. Marie Curie, who changed the face of health in the world forever. She was the first woman scientist who attended this conference, the Solvay conference, that was up to that stage purely for men, because they said men are biologically, intellectually, emotionally more inclined to be good at science than women are. She had a little scarf there. Everything else looks very like the men, but she's got a little scarf there showing that she's a woman, and she brought in a little bit of her own, her flair, to this picture. What happened the year after this conference and after this picture appeared? Suddenly, for the first time, universities were saying, it's amazing, women students are now flooding to actually be part of our science department. Why? Because they saw in Marie what was possible for them. And that is why it's critical for us as organizations to have women role models that the rest of the ladies really aspire to. They give us a different version of what we could be. So shortly, so many women are sitting there at work, waiting. to open up and bloom, waiting for somebody to see them and water them and nurture them. What we need to do is just take what is there and nurture them and grow them and give women with potential the opportunity to be who they are. Thank you.
You know, when we first started, it was a pilot, really, with Stubbs. A pilot that was just meant to sort of, you know, tease everyone to see, does this thing really work? Is this worth it at all? Or is it just this, you know, oversold concept of women empowerment? Because Pam, you will agree with me that this has become like a cliche. It's like, oh yeah, women empowerment again and again. And people are just getting a little bit exhausted from hearing about this topic. But I think it changed my mind. It changed everything inside of me when I began to see this program in action. Let me give you an image to think about what I've seen when I have a first encounter with a group of women coming to do the program. Alinda has mentioned that the program has 9 days, which runs up to about 7 modules of the program. But I think the one module that sets the tone of engagement for this program, the Know Yourself module, it's like you meet a bunch of people that had never had an encounter with themselves, like who I truly am, or someone who recognizes within the first couple of hours that, wow, I have been wearing a garment that is so torn up. I've got holes everywhere. I look inside of me, it's like I have an organization that cares for me, but I don't see it because it's like whatever is being poured on me is coming out. And it's not because maybe there isn't enough support, but that's because the person themselves are not in that space where they feel whole, where they feel they have what it takes to succeed. And literally within the first 2 hours of this program, it's like people decide, that's it. This torn garment that I'm wearing, it's time to take it off. And by the time we end the first 2 days, it's like everybody walks into the designer's room where they go to the cutting room to go and measure their own new material and start cutting their own outfits that they are now going to be making and wearing every day with pride because I made it. And that's what the program does. It's like everybody gets equipped to such an extent that literally it's like we are walking into the specialist room where we are rebuilding our lives to the point where I'm even dressing me anew. And that's what the program does. You see women changing, literally, I'm talking about, because the life inside gets ignited. I get to know who I am. I get to know my limitations and I get to see where I'm underestimating myself and they start stretching their own capacity. I see people that were dropouts of school maybe 10 years ago. Some of them, which is another reality, fell pregnant when they were young. And you go back and you listen to the stories and you realize that a lot of them, it was a lack of self-knowledge. They tell you, I would have never fallen for that because that's where the setback started. I now have to be a mother, a young mother. I have to nurture a child and then I have to just get into a job for the sake of, because I now have responsibilities. But what the program does is that it kind of brings things back to where they should be internally. They start breaking the internal barriers that have always told them, sorry, but you are a young mom that just has to focus on raising your kid and putting bread on the table. They go beyond bread now and start saying, I want to be more. I believe I am more. I can be more, not just for myself anymore, but also for my organization, for my community. These women get to the place where things that were always there, it's like suddenly their eyes open anew. They get reintroduced to their own world. And the passion with which they live life is palpable. You can't help it when you see someone that tells you, I last was in school about 10 years ago, and today they are a BCom student because the program awakened me. It was a reawakening of the inner person that was dead asleep until we said, let's talk about know yourself. Let's talk about grow yourself. Can you start setting some goals that are achievable? And that's where you see the spark. You see the life. One time I was in Randfontein, and there was this one particular lady that was in the program, and she didn't even want to talk about anything, because know yourself is very deep. It's like we have to get to the root of that wound that is still oozing, because if it doesn't heal, let's forget about building anything higher, because while trying to build higher up, the pain might remind you that you're not okay. And so she was eager not to even participate on a particular part of the program that is quite touching. And I went and I spoke to her on the side, and I said, you can decide. You can live in that dark place from now and forever, or however long you give your time and attention. But if you are tired of this, like you tell me, then it's time to confront what is inside of you that is holding you back. Fast forward this story. I met this lady at the end of last year, and the group that she was with says to me, we don't know what is it that you really did. And I'm saying, it's the program that we run and the life that comes from the program. And they say, but ever since this woman stepped into this class, it feels as though she's won the lottery, because she's now infusing everyone with this new energy. She's bubbling. She was losing track on a lot of things, back on track. Life lived differently and with such a purpose. And I think that's the thing, to see women discovering their purpose. I find that to be so fulfilling, and I can never see anything that can do more than that for a woman, because anything else after that is easy. You talk about career progression, it can be achieved because I know who I am. I can withstand pressures, and the pressures are real, because they go through the program, they come back. Sometimes they come back to male counterparts that will start setting up things that are impossible for them, or even just to try and perturb them to see, oh, are you really empowered? Almost like a jeering type of attitude. But because the program doesn't happen once, it's progressive. They come back and report these things. We give them nuggets of wisdom and how they can handle these issues. And when you come back and see women that are flourishing, women that are now in tertiary education, studying, improving their lives, the lives of their children, the lives of their families, it's incredible. And I think there's no greater reward than to see that kind of empowerment.
So you will see on our screen that I have a different kind of sign that says Basadi Bereka, Women at Work. So with the EmpowHER program, as Nonta mentioned, we were the pilot group. So we named it Basadi Bereka, which we translated it to Women at Work for Rainbow. And this is our story. So the aim and the objective for starting the Basadi Bereka program for us at Rainbow was that we needed an initiative that speaks to how we deliver our transformational strategy at Rainbow of doing more, and that speaks to our HR strategic goal of building and accelerating our diverse talent pipeline of female employees. And then the aim for us starting the Basadi Bereka program was to address some of the following. The first was to deliver a step change in female diversity within emphasis on our A, B, and C bands. And that is at our staff level. And then we wanted to put in place a robust program for our high potential female employees. So when we say that is we selected very high potential female employees. So most of them are very skilled in their jobs. They know how to do their work, but we just needed to give them that drive and that will to see that they can, or they do have the ability to lead teams, to supervise, or even to manage others. And then the next one was to have the right quantity and quality of talent available at all times with an emphasis on identified critical roles. When we looked at our business, and it's very highly operational based, we found that you would only have one female manager in the different regions. And when I say regions, that is our main provinces, that's KZN, in the Northwest and in the Western Cape. And then looking into our delegate profile and how we selected the females to be part of this program, we selected key talent female EE employees within the Rainbow business. And it was a selection of up to 18 females per region. The nominations and the selection process was managed by our HR teams and line managers. And then the selected employees were a blend of all staff levels from grades A band to C upper bands. And these are just some of the images of the women in the program. In the middle, you'll also see that we ran the program virtually for the first time in 2022. And then just looking at our current stats. So for the whole Basadi Bereka program, which we started in 2019, we've had 129 participants, females only, of course. And then from that, we've had 20 internal promotions, 2 lateral moves, so people moving in the same job grade, but in different departments or in different sites. And then we've had 4 females that have taken better opportunities outside of the company. And of course, we want to also keep track of those women because we feel that this program has had a part to play in that. And we want to see their potential growing, whether it's in other businesses and not just our own. And then just some snippets in terms of the impact of the program. And I've just put in some words that women have written and how it's impacted them. So some women, it's impacted on their personal growth, where they say it's taught them a lot about themselves and how they've grown as a person. The program has really, and as Alinda has mentioned, that it's shown women their self-worth. It's given them more self-confidence. It's made them more self-aware and given them more resilience, not just in the workplace, but in their personal lives as well. One of the ladies also said that she's now hungry for more knowledge, and she's grateful to have been part of the Basadi Bereka program. And in the working space, some women have said that they used to be so scared in stressful situations, but now they're more calmer and they have learned more better to cope in any type of stressful situation at work. Other women have said that they've become a better person in the workplace. They used to have a bossy attitude and they had a lot of tension within their teams, but now people are starting to see a better side to them. And then we've got women who are more ambitious, women who now are inspired to go back to school and study. They're more motivated. Others are saying that they are now more aware of what they need to do at work in order to achieve their goals. So this is just some of the hundreds of comments that we've had about the Basadi Bereka program and how it's really impacted them in their personal lives, in their family life, at work, and in their communities. And then I just want to share some stories, just 3 stories of women that I've selected. Noglunga Penelope Ramarobi, she started off in the program in 2019 to 2020, and her role was a SHEC coordinator at the time. She's now been promoted to a regional brand integrity manager in the SHEC department since last year, 2022 in September. When I spoke to her, she said she absolutely values the Basadi Bereka program because it gave her more self-confidence. It gave her the ability to take initiatives at work. And she really says that she believes that she's now a manager because of this program, because it showed more potential to herself, and she believed more in herself after attending this program. Then we have Andiswa Zondi. I think she's been the youngest person to attend this program. She started the program last year in the virtual space, 2020 to 2023, and she was an HR intern on a fixed-term contract at the time. She was in our team. I must say she was absolutely shy. She could not finish a sentence without crying. That's how shy she was. She was not able to express herself before she started the program. And after the program, I must tell you, there was a 180-degree change with her. She was able to express herself very well. She became more assertive. She was more aware of herself, and it gave her so much more confidence. And now she's been permanently employed with us as an HR administrator, starting in tomorrow, actually, the 1st of September, in our HR agriculture site in Mandeston. And then lastly, we've got Boitumelo Molale. She also started the program in Rustenburg in 2019. At that time, she was a process leader. After Basadi Bereka, she was then promoted to a senior process leader on the 1st of March 2021, and she was earmarked to become the first female processing manager in our Rustenburg processing plant. They had earmarked her to become a processing manager within 2 years of already being promoted into a senior process leader. Unfortunately, Tumi passed away on the 4th of March. So she had only been in that position for 3 days. But I did want to share her story because we did hear a lot that this program did change the kind of person that she was. And it played a very big role into her being promoted into the current role and being earmarked to become one of the first female senior leaders in that plant. And then some of the things that came about when we started this program. So we had one aim and objective for it, but it brought about so many different issues that are related to women. And it made us aware of them within our Rainbow business. I've just designed this cloud for us to see the words and some of the sentences that came about from this program. So the bigger ones that you see are sexual harassment, gender-based violence, physical abuse, no loving homes, discrimination, unequal opportunities, and so on, that you see here. And these are some of the issues, as Nonta mentioned, on the Know Yourself program. These came about, and we didn't realize how many social justice issues these women were facing, whether it was in their home environment or at work. And so we decided from this that we need to do something, especially on the sexual harassment and the gender-based violence. Those are the 2 biggest words that you see there, because especially with the sexual harassment, these were things that were happening in our very workplace. So we needed to address those. So the next slide. shows the sexual harassment campaign that came about from the Basadi Bereka program itself, because women were making us more aware. So we launched this program with high impact statement posters. You will see there, the first poster that we had was Rainbow has 0% tolerance for sexual harassment, because we wanted that to be our message throughout the campaign. And then we had high impact statements such as, can you help me with this? And then we changed them. We used words that are used by others to females, or even to men themselves. So the statement then reads, can you help me with this, you sexy thing? And then the other one would be, you deserve this permanent job, but let's discuss it over drinks tonight. So we wanted to make the business more aware of, you can use certain words, but once you start putting in other words, then it starts becoming sexual harassment. And it's not just about the touching, it's not about, you know, sexual assault, but it's even in the words that we use. And then we had information posters, and these were just facts about sexual harassment. And our campaign was along the lines of don't cross the line. So that was our full campaign for the year on sexual harassment. And then we wanted to teach people what is sexual harassment, the different behaviors that they need to look out for, and how what sexual harassment impacts us on. And then we wanted to also give females more information in terms of what do they do if they feel that they have been sexually harassed or they have seen it in the workplace. So we've given them different solutions, so numbers and people that they can contact if they do witness or are a victim of sexual harassment in the workplace. We also then did a campaign on gender-based violence in the 16 days of activism last year as well. And we also then targeted on different posters that we put up every week so that people are more aware of what gender-based violence is. So things like physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, as well as financial abuse. And that's the social justice issues that are related to women that came about that we wanted to address in our workplace, to show women that you know, we do put you through programs like this, and if there are other issues that do come up, we want to address them because we do care about our employees as well as their well-being. So thank you very much.